So let me first start by saying that this kind of risk funding that the Indian government has done to vaccine manufacturers, this has never been done in any other industry before. Okay. So from April 2020, the Prime Minister was having meetings, with manufacturers, with the vaccine task force about, making our indigenous vaccine, or even speaking to the foreign vaccine manufacturers, if need be, to import the vaccine. So it's not that, we woke up late and we didn't order, and, that narrative was completely crashed, because since April 2020, we've been talking to everybody. Okay. Now, we've been speaking to our own, so Serum Institute, Bharat Biotech, Zydus Cadila, Genova. So we've been speaking to them and saying, since April, do you need any money? If they need seed funding, if they showed proof of concept, the government even gave them seed funding very, very quickly, So ever since then, there was like a whole process that was going on. So obviously, we're still not a wealthy nation like the United States or the United Kingdom, So we couldn't put in like billions and billions of dollars towards something that probably would not work, So while this is the most risk funding that our government has done, it's still not what some of these wealthier nations did. So what that meant was that we were absolutely sure that once we had vaccines that work, we would then again fund them, augment their capacities so that the dosage would, also come up. Now that's where the gap happened, right? So we knew that there was proof of concept and that the vaccines work. Then the government funded them again by placing advance orders and giving them, advance money, from which they bought machinery, from which they bought raw material, and then augmented their, manufacturing. So we knew that our vaccine supplies are going to be sort of like backloaded. So towards the end of 2021, we are going to see a lot of vaccines coming into the market, and enough for almost our entire population. But the narrative that was set in the first 5 months of our vaccination drive, that we don't have vaccines, there's a vaccine shortage. Vaccine Maitri is very, very important. We were able to get, this was part of our diplomacy. We were able to get into markets that India never had access to. From a security standpoint, it was a very, very important, it is a very, very important program. So the whole narrative that there are not enough vaccines and, you cannot export them, and where are our vaccines, and why isn't Pfizer here? Why isn't Moderna here? So even that narrative, right? Like Pfizer was asking for sovereign immunity waiver. That meant that they could, supply vaccines to us anytime, even if they don't meet the timelines. We still have to accept the vaccines, even if they're late in the timelines. Number one. Number two, for the payment, they wanted us to put, our sovereign properties up. So which meant that if we defaulted on payments, they could, for instance, they could go to one of our embassies and take away our computers, say in New York. They could, pick up one of our planes and go away, So this is not okay for any country from a security standpoint. We were not okay to give that kind of sovereign immunity waiver. And what were the amount of vaccines they were willing to give us? 5 crore. There was a day where we inoculated administered 2 crore vaccines in a day. They were willing to give us 5 crore vaccines in the entire year in 2021. Right. So it just didn't make sense. And that too for like $15, $20, that kind of price. What did we buy our vaccine at? We bought Covishield at 250 rupees. That's lower than the price that many of these countries were charging for ginger turmeric shots. Today, we are seeing, we have proof. We're seeing the kind of saturation in vaccine coverage. Almost all of our adults are vaccinated with the first dose of the vaccine. And, we're about to reach a 90% mark in the second dose. No other country that we know of that is transparent about its data has reached this kind of coverage and this kind of acceptance from what the government wants them to do. See, we've not mandated the vaccine. Despite not mandating these vaccines, people are going out to get, by choice. So that is a win from a communications and from a trust in government standpoint. There was a lot being said about, there's a lot of mocking going on about why is the Prime Minister's picture there on the vaccine certificate. Let me tell you that in rural areas, there is so much superstition and rumor mongering that spreads so quickly that and especially fueled by some of these politicians, right, who say that this is not a credible vaccine and so on and so forth. The Prime Minister's picture on the vaccine certificate added that credibility that was needed to build trust in that, but that, of course, mainstream media does not report. And it really helped increase vaccine uptake and, trust in our response in those parts of the country where we could have seen a very high amount of hesitance. So I think Atmanirbhar Bharat is really, one of the finest things to come out of this crisis. We really have turned the crisis into an opportunity. Now, there are several people who believe that Atmanirbhar Bharat means a closed economy. That is not true. We are willing to plug ourselves into global supply chains. Okay, now let me give you an instance. Even though we have both vaccines that are made in India at this point, we still use many raw materials that we source from outside. Okay, so we get those raw materials from outside the country. We make the vaccines in the country, but we are also now planning to give out those vaccines to other nations, to other parts of the world that need affordable vaccines in large volumes, So we are plugging ourselves. This is one example of how we have plugged ourselves in a position of strength in the global supply chain. Now, this is just vaccines. This can happen through, entire product ranges. This is what we mean when we say Atmanirbhar, that we want to manufacture the products here. We want to send them out. We want to increase interaction in the global, supply chains. We want to be a dependable partner for people who want to, who are looking for products. And considering our stability, our political stability over here, considering the success and the stable economy that we're in, even when there is a complete stop, considering how quickly we rebound from that complete stop, considering all of this, our demographics, everything, considering all of this, it is a very real possibility that we provide a very, we position ourselves and we are a very stable partner, to a lot of countries for a lot of products. So we are not just the pharmacy of the world, we are, the go-to place for several products, and we should aim to, get more.